What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm gonna do a little bit more of a different style video today, so let me know what you guys think. But we are out here in Hawaii. I'll show you guys what's up here. I'll try to stay inside because it's a little bit loud outside, but we'll do a quick little look outside here. Absolutely beautiful. My favorite place on earth, or at least one of them. But I'll go back inside because it's a little bit loud out there. So I want to make this video just to talk about kind of my thoughts on the market right now. So the last video on the YouTube channel was back in April when I was saying, hey, it's a great time to buy the dip on meme coins, specifically meme coins, because Ethereum has like a lot of room to the upside, right? It's going to rebound, right? Ethereum was around 1600 and my targets were 25, 26, basically the weekly ribbons, right? And I also said, once it gets there, man, it's time to, take profits on your memes. And that's what I did. If you guys follow me on TikTok or whatever, I stream almost every day. May 13th, live on stream, I said, look, I'm taking profits here. I think this is the top. And it was the top for total 3, right? For the majority of altcoins, okay? But even if you don't follow me on TikTok or wherever I stream, even on that last video, right? I said, hey, once Ethereum gets up to these levels, 25, 26, the weekly ribbons, you should take profits, right? So fast forward, it's June 30th, almost July. What are my thoughts on the market, okay? Because Ethereum is still basically at those ribbons, but altcoins have come down quite a bit, right? So going into this summer, I'm quite bearish, okay? I'm quite bearish for the summer. And that doesn't mean, oh, this guy's a perma bear, I'm quite bearish specifically for Bitcoin, for altcoins too, as well, but I'm bearish on Bitcoin because I feel that it's running out of steam here. And I know that might be a hot take. There's a lot of other people, a lot of other creators, saying, look, Bitcoin's doing something special here. It's about to go to $1 million over the next 5 years. And look, I'm a long-term bull on Bitcoin, but we're gonna get into the charts in a few minutes. And I'll show you why I'm bearish here on Bitcoin, okay? And crypto in general. But on the monthly time frame on Bitcoin, you will see that we are losing major momentum. And we're gonna have a monthly close today. We're gonna have a monthly close today, and we're gonna print a bearish monthly div, another bearish monthly div, okay? So essentially, we've actually been losing momentum for over a year on Bitcoin specifically. And you'll see that the RSI on the monthly time frame, the strength of Bitcoin, has peaked right before the halving in 2024, right? Then we had a small bearish div when we made the new high up at 110, okay? And then we corrected back down to 74, okay? Now we are actually making a greater bearish div where we've slightly taken out the highs to 112, but the strength on the monthly time frame is much lower, okay? So in my opinion, from my experience, what does that mean, okay? It's kind of like a car running on fumes going up a hill, and it's just barely now getting to the top of the hill before it slides down, okay? So in my opinion, the next move down over the summer, over the next 3 or 4 months, will be worse than what we saw earlier this year. That's my opinion, okay? That is just my opinion. However, this does not make me super bear. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin long-term, but I think a lot of people are getting confused because of inflation, right? People cannot accept that we have been in a bear market for crypto for 6 months. Jam, how can we be in a bear market? Bitcoin just went back to the all-time highs, right? We need to look at things adjusted for inflation, right? Look at total 3. Never went near the December highs, right? We made a much lower low, okay? Even if you look at Bitcoin divided by gold, and again, we'll get into these charts in a second, but much lower high. Even if you just look at total market cap, lower high. So I think after the summer, everybody's going to understand what I'm talking about. But here's the thing, right? Most people miss the top in December, right? And because of inflation, they still don't believe that was the top. But it works both ways. People will miss the bottom too, waiting for lower prices because of inflation, right? Inflation makes you think we're higher than we are, but on the downside, it'll also make you think we're higher than we are, meaning you'll think we're going lower, which we won't, right? So you don't want to be too greedy to the downside, right? I think that regardless of how long the bear market lasts, after this summer, the risk reward on Bitcoin will be much better for buying than it is right now, in my opinion. It's just my 2 cents, but that's what I think, man. And, you know, Bitcoin, everybody has to have a little bit of a reality check here, okay? I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. However, I'm not naive enough to think that I'm early to Bitcoin in 2025, because I'm just not, okay? Bitcoin is, 15 years old, okay? And in my opinion, it is at the top of its S curve. What does that mean? Whenever you have a new or innovative technology, you very often get what's called an S curve, which means you have the beginning of it, which is like the bottom of the S, trades flat, nobody knows what it is. And then you have, boom, expansion, right? It's going parabolic. And then you have the top of the S, it flattens off again. If you adjust for inflation, we've essentially just gone back to the levels of last cycle, right? 5 years ago, okay? So when you consider that, plus we made a new high before the halving, right? First time that's ever happened. It kind of checks out, right? It kind of checks out. So in my opinion, this coming down that we're going to have over the summer and throughout the rest of the year is going to be a really, really good opportunity. But because of inflation, right, people will not even buy, right? Because they're going to think it's going to go lower. So it's a little bit difficult to gauge, but that's just my opinion. And maybe it's not a popular one. You're kind of now seeing a lot of even non-crypto or investing creators kind of start talking about Bitcoin and stuff, which in my opinion is not bullish in my opinion. But yeah, everything that I'm saying, I'm not just spitting it out of my mouth. I'm going to show you guys in the charts in a second. But, I think you kind of have to understand, like, the world that we are in now, right? The world that we're in. It feels like for this whole cycle, right, everybody's just been waiting, right? Waiting for whatever it is. Oh, once we get rate cuts, or once Bitcoin dominance drops, or what, you know what I'm saying? And they really just missed a full cycle, right? It's almost July of 2025. Now, I think this is the bear year, right? And look, whether I'm right or wrong, it's going to be proven within the next 2 months. Within the next 2 months, right? Because yes, we've made lower highs since December on basically every metric except for BTC USD. However, the big breaks of structure, I think, will likely happen this summer, right? So, quite lucrative, But hey, don't hate the player, hate the game. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about. So let's get into it. All right. So I'm going to show you guys some stuff here. This is total 3, but I'm just going to show you Bitcoin here first. Okay. So Bitcoin here, this is a weekly time frame. I'm going to show you the monthly. So we're going to get this close in actually 5 hours, okay? This is going to close in 5 hours. So probably when you watch this video, it's going to be closed, okay? Actually, for sure, when you watch this video, it's going to be closed. But this is a huge gap here, right? And I know, look, RSI is not everything, obviously. But on the monthly time frame, especially with Bitcoin, historically, it's been a big deal, okay? Historically, it's been a big deal. Now, you can see from the halving to the end of last year, we had a bit of a bearish div, right? I mean, it's a bearish div. Now, in my opinion, okay, this one is much more bearish because the gap in the price is smaller, but the gap in the strength is bigger. And that is, from my experience, more bearish, okay? Much more bearish. Basically, what that tells me is like it bounced back to these highs a little bit higher, but the strength is so much less, right? So in my opinion, it's like the next move, it's similar to here, right? You had the first drop and then you had the second huge drop, right? So we've had the first drop, right? And because of inflation, right, or whatever you want to call it, we've actually gone higher, made a higher high, but the next drop will be a bad one, right? It will be a bad one in my opinion, okay? Now I'll show you guys what I'm talking about when you look at Bitcoin versus gold, right? So it's pretty interesting because essentially what's happened here for Bitcoin versus gold. So you can see, first of all, this is a lower high from December. But what's even more interesting is the level that we're at right now is essentially a place we've gotten rejected 3 times already, right? So last cycle, we double topped at this level. This is 2021. At the halving of this cycle, we topped. We broke above this, and then we broke down below. So basically what this would be is like a failed auction, right? This is a failed deviation above the line. And now we're basically more or less rejecting at the same level, okay? So that's really, really bearish, right? It's really, really bearish. And you guys can see, if you haven't figured it out already, we're essentially repeating last cycle, but just a year ahead. So it's, in my opinion, last year was the bull year, or like 2021 of last cycle, right? So, you know, I think the next move down is really bearish, in my opinion. I think the next move down is really bearish. However, you can see that if we go down, right? If we come down, you know, let's say somewhere around these levels on Bitcoin versus gold, people on Bitcoin versus the dollar will be waiting for lower prices, right? Now, whether we get there or not remains to be seen. However, very, very bearish in my opinion, okay? Extremely bearish. Let's take a look at total 3, right? So this is a little bit more drawn out for you guys. Basically 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, just a little bit more spread out, right? Compared to last cycle. So it's about to be a bad time over the summer, in my opinion, right? You're going to be losing, I mean, you're almost already losing major support here. It's going to be a really bad time. And I know everybody's like, oh no, man, we're going to, you know, go to the moon. But you need to understand, like, we already had the most bullish phase for this cycle. And most people will say, well, you know, we didn't have our alt season, Bitcoin dominance didn't go down. Well, yeah, we're in QT, right? We're still in a tightening environment. Now, I think we're going to be in QE sooner or later, but by the time we're in QE, it's going to be next cycle already, right? Now let's look at Bitcoin versus the NASDAQ. This is one of the most bearish charts for Bitcoin, okay? And again, very similar to last cycle. Last cycle, you made lower highs. So this cycle, you're making higher highs with lower highs on the RSI. And you are actually falling out of this ascending wedge. This is, I cannot stress how bearish this is, okay? This is Bitcoin versus the NASDAQ. I cannot stress how bearish this is, okay? This is one of the most bearish things I could possibly show you for crypto. Okay. So this falling out of here and losing this support would be detrimental. Okay. Would be detrimental. And people are going to say, well, yeah, then the NASDAQ is ripping. It's at all-time highs. It sure is. It absolutely sure is. And it's about to print a monthly bearish div, right? So the NASDAQ could keep going for a few months or go sideways or whatever and then roll over again, right? It's totally possible. But that doesn't mean Bitcoin has to go with it, right? You guys can actually look at last summer. Look at last summer. What happened last summer around this time, right? This is the NASDAQ. Let's take a look. Look at when the NASDAQ peaked here in July last summer. This is when crypto peaked, by the way, in February, March, right? See, we peaked here, went down. NASDAQ kept going higher. Similar thing happening right now, right? Similar thing happening right now. Why is that? Because we're not in QE, right? Markets don't favor risk on assets when we're not in QE, quantitative easing, right? It's just how she goes, man. It's just how she goes. I'm repeating the same thing, you know, every video I feel, but it's just how she goes. So on the monthly, it's super bearish, right? On the weekly, we just had a strong week for sure. So I would say your most bullish scenario is that you have a wick above the highs like you did in January, get everybody really excited, and then just nuke. But even that, I think, is not super likely. But if it happens, if we break to the upside, that would be the scenario that happens, just like here in January, right? Convince everybody that alt season is coming, where really the top was a month ago, just like December and just like May here, right? So that's what I would say. All right, that is what I would say. I think the summer is going to be a really bearish one. Super bearish. Let's look here monthly. This is extremely bearish, right? So this is the total crypto market cap divided by gold. You actually already lost the bullish structure. You just back tested it, right? You're likely going to reject, and then you're likely going to, you know, get rejected and fall back to this huge level, right? It's very likely at this point, right? Look at the red lines. That's where we are. Sorry, let me move this over once more. There we go. Right? It's just how she is. And look at this. This hasn't even made a new all-time high since last cycle. That's not bullish, right? It's halfway through the bull year, quote unquote. That's not bullish. It's because we're in QT. This is a space that Bitcoin has never been here before. The only time Bitcoin was, our crypto was not in full QE was 2019, right? And that wasn't even QT. That was just pausing QE, right? And what happened in 2019? Bitcoin 4x, alts didn't do shit, right? We're just getting a more extended, greater version of 2019, right? For a full cycle. So this is extremely bearish, right? So I'm very confident, in my opinion, that it's going to be a bearish summer, okay? However, I don't want you guys to take that as like, oh my gosh, this guy's a perma bear, or like, oh, it's so over. No, you should be paying attention, because everybody who is bullish right now, you might be one of them watching the video, they will only flip bearish when the lows from April get taken out. They'll only flip bearish when that happens, okay? But guess what? Let's take a look at last cycle. When that happened, right, when we took out those lows right here, you were basically a month away from more or less the bottom, right? Right? So as everybody was leaving, admitting the bearishness, it's basically time to flip bullish. Now, am I saying it's going to recover just like this? No, but it could, right? Depending on how quickly the Fed acts, what happens in the world, that might be a catalyst to switch us into QE more quickly. It could be quick, right? So it's not really time to just like walk away after the summer. It's actually time to really lock in, because I think it'll be really good opportunity. But anyways, that's just my 2 cents. So if you guys like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and all that stuff. Definitely follow me on TikTok, because I stream almost every day. Follow me on Kick. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want weekly video updates, as well as any trades that I take in crypto and the stock market, you guys can check out the Wolf Room. But other than that, man, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.